I'm your host, Spencer, and I am joined by my co-host, a Silver Pro who's going to play Legacy in our Team Constructed event, Danny Castro.
I don't have the most experience on Legacy, but I have a very good experience with Legacy. So, yeah, why not? I think that's good.
Team Constructed Trios. I was like, yeah, I'm going to put Danny on Modern, and Mason's like, doesn't he have a Legacy GP top 8? And Danny and I both laughed.
Yeah, Legacy Master, clearly.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us. This isn't about Legacy, however. This is about Limited because we are limited time only. You know who else is about Limited Magic? One of our sponsors at GameGrid. You can check them out at playatgamegrid.com. They have a new website. It's super awesome. And if you're looking for a place to play Magic near you, playatgamegrid.com will tell you if there's a GameGrid near you. And we really appreciate their sponsorship. It means the world to us. You could be listening from GameGrid, which means you already know how awesome they are. So don't forget to tell them that we sent you. We really appreciate GameGrid. So check them out, playatgamegrid.com. Don't forget to check out our other sponsor, where you can find tons of great Magic content. That's at the Mana Base. You can check them out, and their sponsor, Fusion Gaming. You can get all of your sealed products if you're looking to do a draft, looking to do a ton of stuff. Like there's the new Unstable coming out. If you're looking to draft a sweet format, buy that box from Fusion Gaming. Let them know that we sent you. It's really awesome. And you can also check out all the other amazing content creators at the Mana Base, such as the Mason Slayer, Nikachu. So don't forget to check them out. And you can support this podcast directly by going to our new Patreon, patreon.com/LTOMTG. It had to happen. We're really excited about it. And we want to give a special shout out to our first patron, Alan. Alan, thank you so much for your patronage. It means the world to us. I can't express it enough. It's really cool to see that first patron come in before we even announce it on the podcast. So thank you so much. You can join the show too, patreon.com/LTOMTG. We'll allow listeners to pick topics probably. We'll probably allow listeners to ask questions on the show. Just giving the patrons a ton more flexibility into the kind of content that you want to listen to, because we want to support our biggest listeners and the ones that pay us to produce content, while keeping the show free for everybody that maybe can't afford it right now or just is just listening for an entertainment value. So thank you so much to Alan, and thank you so much to our future patrons. That's patreon.com/LTOMTG. So we have no biggest movers this week, no color of the week this week, because this format is old and stale.
Yeah, it's been out for a while, like a really long time.
Fall sets are rough, man, because you're in the fall set for a long time.
Because of holidays, right? So it just kind of they go into holidays and they do holiday promotional sets and stuff, right? Yeah.
Right.
That makes sense.
So it's just so we'll probably do a special on whatever cube comes out, things like that.
There's Iconic Masters that comes out tonight. I'm actually I might go to GameGrid and draft at midnight tonight. So
why would you tempt me?
I know. Iconic Masters draft.
I'm not going with you.
It's at midnight. Let's go.
I'm not going with you.
We don't have to
at
drive.
6 a.m. for Portland.
All the better.
I'm not going with you. That's not a thing that's happening. I
mean, you don't say I never offered.
I will. Literally the first time he offers. Literally the first time he offers. But we will do an Iconic Masters review, probably talk a little bit about the set, the archetypes, things like that. It's really fun. We really appreciate the fact that Wizards gives us new limited sets during a little time like this. So thank you so much to Wizards. Let's go on to our first segment that we will be doing today, though, and it's a really fun one. We're gonna do a training grounds on the top 3 lessons that we've learned in Limited. So Limited Magic is kind of a different animal than Constructed Magic a lot of times. And this week I was talking on Constructed Criticism, our Constructed podcast, about how I had been playing so much Limited preparing for the Limited GP that I started to mulligan Constructed hands the way I mulligan Limited hands. And I was like, whoa, why am I doing this? Hand is not remotely keepable.
Uh-huh.
And it's because the power level of your Constructed decks is so high that if you keep a Limited good hand in Constructed, oftentimes you can just get run over. Mm-hmm. And these are just things that we have to recognize and learn as we go between formats. If you're a PPDQ grinder or a GP grinder or an SCG grinder, you might have multiple formats that you have to play, and Limited is often going to be one of them, especially if you want to play at the top level on the Pro Tour. Mm-hmm. So we want to talk about the biggest things that we've learned in Limited Magic. So, Gannon, we'll start with you. Your number 3 thing, and we've actually done a podcast on this, is?
Yeah, so mine is drafting a deck and not just a pile of cards.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Like, isn't any pile of cards you draft going to end up to be your deck?
Yeah, technically. So this also applies in sealed too. Like, I think it's important in sealed to build a deck.
I
So
actually think that we secretly have two of the same ones.
yeah, we do. Yeah, definitely the same. So what I'm talking about in draft is there's a lot of times, especially in like pack 2 and pack 3, that you need to be taking picks that are weird because they fit your deck, and the card might not be as good as the other card, but your deck needs it. Or in certain formats, like you have to know what each archetype does, and you need to know like what cards are important, and that like your pick order can vary really like quite a bit based on the archetype that you're in. And so just when you're drafting or just in limited in general, you need to look at your deck as a deck. Like how are the games going to play out? What are
often I see people who like draft every pick in a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is they're like, well, this was the best card in the pack. Well, this was the best card in the pack. Well, this was the best card in the pack. And I'm like, cool, but like eventually your cards have to come together. So like you have 6 5-mana removal spells and two 2-drops.
Yeah.
Like you're going to lose a lot of games, and you're going to sit there wondering like, what did I do wrong? And you didn't draft a deck of cards.
Yep.
You didn't say these are the card. Like at some point you have to say, this 2-drop creature is literally a 2/1 for 2. This is a Goblin Piker, but you know what? My deck really needs a Goblin Piker right now.
Yep.
And too often people don't do that.
No, it's true. And like I think that's like the level 1 of this, of what I was referring to of this, is like you need to be taking picks that fit your curve and that complete your deck. Like you need to take a bad removal spell or a bad combat trick over another 3-drop because you just have enough 3-drops. But also, like, I know I was talking to Michael about one of the decks that he drafted. I think it was at the GP, where he did a perfect example of he drafted a deck. He first pick one win, one with the win. Second pick one with the win, and then he just went all in on have a lot of one with the wins, and then play like main deck Spell Pierce, main deck Dive Down, a cancel that he brought in almost every sideboarded game, and he just understood that his
deck was constructed was to play one with the win.
Yep. And so I think that when you're doing that in limited, your ceiling for how good your deck can be is so much higher if you're thinking about your deck as you draft.
It's actually really funny. I was talking to somebody about like somebody once asked me. They said it was 3 GPs ago. They said, Spencer, what's like your favorite limited deck that you've ever drafted? And I told them, I said, it has to be the mono red deck that I drafted in was it M15? Whichever one had Convoke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's M15. Yep.
Yeah.
With like Stoked Flames, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I'm drafting this deck, and I get like to pick 12, right? And I have the choice between an artifact. It might have been like a Bronze Sable or something. Maybe that's the wrong set. Anyway, it was like the same card. And some white 2-drop that was a little bit better. And I thought to myself, what? So like this white 2-drop doesn't mean anything, right? But this 2-mana artifact like could just fit into whatever deck I end up in. And as I started drafting, like I kept taking cards, and I realized I was like, okay, my seat, like the deck that my seat is telling me to draft is mono red. And had I just taken that white card, I could have easily thought in the back of my head, my deck's a red-white deck. But what was actually happening, and what I needed to recognize is like all of my picks so far are these are the things that I need. This is what my deck wants. Not what I want as a Magic player or what I think a heuristic tells me, but actually what is in front of me and what can I do. Yeah. And that speaks to like the one with the win thing, right? Like, all right, I have 2 one with the wins. These are both really powerful cards. What can I do from here? And what is my seat telling me? And what is my deck telling me?
And this comes up a lot with, I have a tendency in draft to
play terrible decks.
Yeah, like really bad decks, but they have a game plan. I definitely think that is one of my strengths in limited is that I always have a plan. Whether that plan is good or not is definitely like it's up in the air a lot of times, but like I think that just having a plan and having a good idea of how you're going to win matches of Magic is so critical when you're drafting. It's huge.
Yeah, I think that mine is kind of similar. And it was funny. I saw Matt Sperling and I didn't thank him. I was going to, but I kind of got. But I was at Grand Prix Salt Lake. It was M15 Limited. And I was looking at my deck, kind of talking to Travis Padilla, former host of this show. And we were kind of just talking about my deck and just debating, like, if I built it correctly for this GP in the sealed portion. I think I might have been 3-1 at this point. And we're just talking, and over my shoulder, Matt Sperling is like, "Here, let me see," and just grabs my pool, looks at it, and is like, "Yeah, you should be playing this Heat Wave or whatever the X deal X damage is. Like, just splash it off of these, like, and then I think that other than that, you built your deck correctly." And hands it back to me, and I was like, "Okay, thanks."
Uh-huh.
So I sideboard in Heat Wave every single game for the rest of the tournament. And it won me multiple games, and I X1'd that day one of that GP.
Sweet.
And, you know, it's funny because that was one of those moments where I learned a few things. And so often I hear people give misleading tips when it comes to sealed Magic. And one of those misleading tips is build around your rares. And while it is true that your bombs are very important in sealed, they're not actually saying if you have a bunch of chaff and a rare, you should play that bunch of chaff and a rare. It's still more important than building a good deck. That's actually not what they're saying. What they're actually saying when they give you this advice is if you can splash the rare, or if your deck is with the rare is like half a point worse than the other deck you could build, play the one with the rare, or find a way to splash it. That's a very different statement than well, it doesn't matter. Just play your rares.
Yeah.
And too often, people just play the rares. And I think that one of the things that I learned about this is building your best sealed deck. Because sealed is the format where you get the biggest advantage before you sit down for your match. Especially at a Grand Prix or a PPTQ.
For sure.
Because what happens is everybody sits down, they build their decks, and then basically everybody in the room misbuilds them. Mm-hmm. Literally every human.
At a GP, I assume it's like under 100 people build the correct 40. Like,
oh, it's way under 100.
Yeah, like, which is
like maybe 8.
That's like 2 or 3%. Like, it's probably like about 1% or under that. Yeah.
And so the closer you can get your deck to the correct 40, the bigger of an edge you have, even if your deck is trash.
For sure. Because
so many other decks are built incorrectly and become trash because of it.
Yep.
So when I say your deck is trash, that's not true. What I mean is your pool is trash. And this is the biggest, like one of the biggest changing moments for me in sealed. I used to be that player that was like, I don't like sealed, it's all about luck. And as I've gotten better at Magic, I actually realized sealed is my favorite Magic format. It's not even close. And it's because I adopted this mindset of building your pool's best deck and worrying about what you're in control of and not what your pool looks like. So,
yeah, because having all of the variables in front of you is like, that's a very strange way to play Magic. That doesn't happen very often, right?
Oh, never.
Like,
right?
You know,
you have literal perfect information.
You do. 100% perfect. You know, if you've played enough of the format, you know what the average opponent is going to look like, and you know the exact cards that you have access to, and you can make a theoretically perfect decision based on that. And that is like, in draft, you can't do that because
it's not even possible.
Yeah, there's unknown information. There's so much unknown information that you can make correct decisions, but they will be incorrect looking back at it. Whereas in sealed, that doesn't really happen. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, you have perfect information. So number 2 for me is the power of reevaluation. So many Magic players suffer from accepting previous experience as fact and then just moving forward with it. A perfect example of this is unnatural selection or fight, whatever the 3-mana fight card was
Yep.
from
Yeah.
Battle for
Super.
Zendikar.
Yeah. Unnatural aggression or something.
Aggressive. That could be it. And what happened is I go to this draft where the player to my right took 5 of them.
Okay.
I play him in round 1. This is a top 8 of a PPTQ draft. He took 5 of them, and I was green-white. Let's be clear. Which was a terrible deck, but, like, that's what I got given.
Sure.
I play him in round 1. He is also green-white.
And he was on your right?
And he was on my right.
Perfect.
I promptly 2-0'd him.
Okay.
And he's like, I don't get it. Like, I have all the best green-white cards. And I was like, I don't know that you played a playable green-white card in this format. Like, and it's so funny how, like, this player had played 0 of this format before, and he relied completely on his previous experience.
Mm-hmm.
And too often we do that, and we don't have the foresight to, like, I mean, our first segment on the show every week is Biggest Movers. We are constantly reevaluating the cards in a limited format, because if we don't, then why even play limited?
Yep. I think this most recent set is like the perfect example of in Ixalan, everyone started playing it and was like, oh, I hate this set. I keep losing to like One with the Wind and Mark of the Vampire. And then everyone's like, oh, wait, how I've been evaluating cards is completely incorrect. And I need to completely reevaluate all of the cards. Like Contract Killing is a great example. Everyone looks at that card. Slam dunk, best black common, it's amazing. But then as the format went on, it's like, wow, that card is super punishable. Like, yeah, it's good, but like if you just get dive downed or if they just curve out aggressively, then like Contract Killing is fine, but it's not nearly as good as it looked at the beginning. And you have to be willing to admit that and be Michael and first pick One with the Wind and slam like the best archetype because you can correctly evaluate
Second best
update.
archetype, but
okay, it's up there.
Which would you rather have, One with the Wind Jade Guardian or Vanguard Mark?
One of those situations, both are common, and you can get 5 One with the Winds. The other situation,
I'm just asking what you would rather do.
Uncommon. I would rather
Vanguard
have.
Mark.
Yeah, I mean Vanguard is obviously better.
That's how I won my limited PPDQ. I had two Vanguards, 2 Marks.
Yeah. I mean, but that like it being uncommon is a huge difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely more.
But I think that like going into the set, Vanguard is like the perfect example of this reevaluation thing, where you're like, like I guess I'll play it, and then like you play 3 games with it, and you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Like completely.
My opponent never blocked. Never.
They can't.
And if they did, they got crushed.
Yeah, they can't. Yeah,
so I think that like
huge.
Just being willing to admit that you were wrong at the start, which is hard. Like human nature is that you don't want to admit those things. But if you want to get better at Magic and you want to win more games of limited, you have to be willing to say, I was wrong to start with. I was very, very, very wrong.
Yep.
And Mark of the Vampire is like Spectral Flight was already a good card, so we don't need to worry about One with the Wind. But Mark of the Vampire, like that's been printed before. It wasn't good then. And now it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, this is like the best card in my deck.
Mm-hmm. It's insane. Yep, it was so good. So my second lesson was when to save your removal. So I think this applies in both limited and constructed, but it comes up in limited all the time. Because when you draft the limited deck, you realistically only have like 2 or 3 removal spells. And so in a given game, it's very likely that you will only see 1 removal spell. And you will have to use it on the right creature, and you can get horribly punished if you use your removal on a creature that you didn't need to. So, but at the same time, sometimes you can gain so much tempo by burning your removal for damage to be able to get in with all your attackers that it's the correct spot to use your removal, get in 8 damage, put them to 6, and then you're so far ahead that it almost doesn't matter what they play, they can't catch up. And so I think just being able to weigh I think it's just like kind of foreseeing how the game is going to play out, and your removal is such a huge part of that in limited. Knowing like how your removal is going to line up against their creatures, what their life total's at, how much you're going to be able to pressure their life total, and being able to like correctly utilize that precious resource in each individual circumstance that you find yourself in.
Yeah. So can we go to my number one and continue this conversation?
Yes.
Okay. So my number one lesson from limited Magic is understanding the value of a card. And when to use your removal was part of this lesson for me. So my very, very first draft, I remember it. So back in the day, in the ancient days of Magic, because I'm an old crotchety man, it's not actually that long ago, but we had ELO rating. And somehow, by some miracle, I got a really, really high ELO rating. Like top 500 in the world, not close. And you got ELO by playing matches of Magic, and then similar to chess, it would go up and down depending on your win or loss against the person. Mm-hmm. And I had never drafted. I never once drafted. And so what happened is somebody told me about ELO, and it mattered to me, and so I couldn't draft because I couldn't afford to learn to draft.
My ELO is at stake. I must only play a format that I am an expert at. Well, therefore, I cannot. I
couldn't draft.
Yeah. I don't know how to draft. Therefore, I can't draft. It makes sense.
Yeah.
You have to get like a pseudo DCI, like you know how people in video games get a Smurf account.
Yeah.
To practice other champions or whatever. Yeah.
So, in hindsight, there's probably lots of workarounds, right? Like I do drafts with my friends. I go to MTGO, which was terrible at the time actually, so I probably wouldn't have done that. But so my first draft, I want to say, was M11 limited, and everybody kept passing me Llanowar Elves, which, to be fair, in Cube, if you're used to Cube, is a really good Magic card.
Yes.
And it's a decent Magic card a lot of the time in regular draft. Mm-hmm. However, 6 Llanowar Elves is probably too many. Uh-huh. And I had a deck of 6 Llanowar Elves and some awkward cards. And what I didn't understand is, like, the first Llanowar Elf on turn 1 is really good in limited. Really, really good. But if your entire hand is Llanowar Elves, it makes it a little worse. But, like, in constructed, like, I've played Elves at this point, right? And I'm like, 6 Llanowar Elves, like...
How can I possibly lose?
I could never lose.
What am I going to do with all this mana? Who knows, but it's going to be something great.
And, so that was my first draft, and I remember, like, okay, I clearly don't understand something. Because these Llanowar Elves turned into not cards really, really quick. Correct. Especially because I didn't have very many 3-drops.
They play a 2/2, and then you play every spell in your hand.
I play another Llanowar Elves.
Attack,
and I lose. And, I remember that draft really vividly because, first of all, it was my first one. Mm-hmm. And second, because I don't think I realized how much I learned at the time. But by my second or third draft, I already understood the difference between a 1/1 and a 2/2 unlimited. And, by my fourth or fifth draft, I understood the value of a 2/3 over a 3/2. Or or not over, but in similar.
The difference between the two.
Yeah. And, by my seventh draft, I understood, like, oh, while this 5/1 haste for 3 is, like, that's a lot of power, also probably don't want it in my deck. Uh-huh. And then by my 10th draft, you can constantly learn what a card is, right? And I think that so often, people's understanding of what 2-for-1s are change. People's understanding of what different things are. They're like, oh, no, but, like, this is a 2-for-1. It gave me a 1/1, and bounced a creature. And it's like, okay, well, I don't actually know that you got a card out of that. That's not a real card. I'm just giving an example.
No, that's a valid example then.
And for me, it's like, I didn't understand, like, why is this person beating me when they don't play a creature until turn 4? All he did was lightning bolt my guy, doomblade my other guy, and then do something else. Like, I presented the threats. Like, how is he so lucky? And like, you have to understand, what is this worth? What am I presenting as a threat, and is it worth the thing that I'm presenting and the mana that I'm paying? A good example of this is Wizards' attempt to make us hate our lives by making Ixalan Binding somehow constructed playable. Because, like, what is the value of a removal spell in your deck? What are you willing to pay for? Because until Battle for Zendikar, I don't think that we thought that 4-mana removal spells could possibly be the best card in a limited set. And 2 4-mana removal spells were the best cards in that limited set.
Mm-hmm. They were the backbone of the limited set.
They were they have
4-mana exile a creature.
I don't think they've printed a 4-mana common removal spell since that kills anything.
Yeah, I mean, not at common. It gets pretty tough for sure.
Right, those were commons, and when we read the set, it was like, do I want this?
Yeah.
Like,
and then they turned into amazing.
And they're the 2 best cards in the set. Yeah. So what does that teach us about the value of a card, Danny?
So I think that just in limited, it's so easy to see the differential between cards more so than constructed, because you're in limited, each card, it's so combat oriented that your cards line up against each other. And so when I have a 3/3 and you have a 2/3, your 2/3 is not worth anything anymore when they're just lined up against each other.
This is so funny. I had a podcast episode where we talked about this, where I talked about 3/3s for 3, and I was like, my 3/3 for 3 is removal for your 2/2. Unless you want to spend a combat trick, I've killed your guy. Yeah, he's dead. Like, he doesn't matter anymore.
Mm-hmm. And I remember I was young. This was like when I didn't understand Magic at all. And I had some random guy at a game store was telling me about this pro Magic player that his strategy was to draft all of the biggest creatures in this format. It was like some random something, and he would just take all the 6/6s and then just splash them all. And he thought it was like such a good strategy. And like, back then I didn't understand why, but it kind of is that logic where if you have the biggest creature on the board, attacks are horrible.
I mean, even in this format, right? Like,
oh yeah,
like they gave us a straight up 6-mana 6/6 in this format.
Yep.
And like, we were like, oh, that's fine. But also it turns out to be like, oh, okay, well, that's is a like common
the baseline for for green. That's like what green does.
This is the thing that green wants to be doing. You probably want 1 to 2 of these in your deck. Mm-hmm. If you're a green dinosaur deck, okay. Yep. I didn't realize
your game plan is to play him on turn 5 or 4 if lucky, right? Like that. You draft that deck and you're like,
Danny life.
Yeah, exactly. But I think so. For me, when I'm playing constructed, your cards are so powerful. There's so many 2-for-1s, 3-for-1s, combos that are like almost infinite value, and like your decks don't play out, like your cards don't line up 1-for-1 very frequently unless you're playing like control with counter spells. But in limited, it's so apparent, like everything is on the board and you're seeing how the cards interact, and it's a lot of vanilla creatures trading into each other. And so you learn pretty quickly how to value each card and how good each one is in a certain situation. That's why it like this connected so well to the removal aspect of you need to understand how to use your removal.
What is your card worth?
Yep.
Because like so often early on, like I would be like, well, I have this Doomblade and they have a guy in my way, so I'm gonna kill it and I'm gonna attack for 2. Yep. It's like, is that how you wanted to spend your 3rd turn?
Yeah, that's a huge like. Oh, I have no 3-drop. all I have is this Doomblade. Okay, I get like I need to play a spell this turn, obviously, so I'm going to Doomblade your 2/3, and then attack you.
I'll hit you with this Goblin Piker. Go
Yep.
ahead. And
Yep.
it's like, oh man. Like if I saw somebody make the plays now that I was making in those drafts, I'd be like, I'd probably throw up in my mouth a little bit.
Uh-huh.
I'd
Yeah, it's real like you don't think, but you don't think about it. Some like the play is so obvious, right? I have no other spell to play. Obviously, I'm not gonna not play a spell. That wouldn't make any sense.
Right.
But a lot of times that's the correct choice.
and that's not dogging on people that don't know better, right? Like that's what this podcast is for. That's more like, Spencer, you dum-dum. It's this really funny thing in Magic where we were actually talking about this at work today because we were talking about Magic and talking about coding and work for a minute. And I when you get better at Magic, you realize how terrible you are. Like you're like, I am so bad at this game.
Yeah.
Like Magic is so hard.
Yeah.
And
the more you learn.
This is one of those moments. I should go back and do videos on my 2 feature matches. You should do this too, Danny. Let's do it together.
Sure.
Let's do video series on our feature matches and talk about them and see what we've learned since then. But it's hard. Magic is tough, and like this part of like knowing the value of your card, this can change as the format changes. This can change as like the value of your 1-mana combat tricks. It wasn't until Theros that was like a thing that you cared about. They gave us Giant Growths like they were nothing.
Yeah.
They were nothing. And you know what? They printed them in the same sets as Lightning Bolts. So you know what? Giant Growth didn't matter.
Yeah, that's it. And then now Sure Strike is like, I know I could use this Sure Strike right now, but is there going to be like a juicy 3-for-1 in the future that I'm going to miss out on? I need to save this for my Thrasher Raptors. Like, I need to really, really give them the pain.
I think that leads you to your number one, which is probably like the number one thing I've ever learned in Magic. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. So my number one is playing to your outs. And the reason why I learned this in Limited is because for some reason it was so much easier for me to think of my outs in Limited because they were individual cards instead of like groups of cards. I'm not sure if that makes sense. Like I would be playing a game and I'd be far behind, but I would be like, okay, I know the only way that I can win is if I erase them because they have they're ahead on board. And so I need to get in some damage so that my lightning axe or an Inferno Jet. Like I need to play so that if I draw my Inferno Jet that deals 6 damage to them, I'm going to win this game. I need to get them to 6. Or I know that I can't kill this giant lifelinker now, but if I get blown up by this combat trick that I think he has, then I'm going to automatically lose. So what I have to do is just take this hit, hope to draw the removal spell, and then kill it on my turn. Like you'll get yourself in lots of situations where you're very far behind, but if you draw a certain card, you can put yourself ahead. But by making the losing play that turn, you eliminate those outs. Like you don't give yourself any chance of coming back and winning. And in Limited is just it's so critical to be able to eke out all of those victories because so many matches of Limited are like really close. Like I think I experience more close matches of Limited when both players play spells than in Constructed, just because your cards trade off for each other and you're trying to like identify a line of play that can win.
I think that so often, like when I think of the most rewarding matches of Magic I've played, like a lot of them are Limited. There's some, like I played a game that I lost this week where I got to cast a River's Rebuke and wipe my opponent's board when he had like clear advantage in Constructed, and like that's cool, right? Like you get them to make like a bunch of tokens with their stuff, with their Whirler Virtuoso. But like when I think about like my PPTQ win that I just had, like against Aaron, like I had to make so many such so many super close decisions where like if you slip up, you're done. Yeah. And knowing that they're close decisions and knowing like, so this is a perfect playing to your outs example. So Aaron attacks with 3 creatures and I'm behind. and I have a Vanguard in play,
Mm-hmm.
and I am at 6 life, and he is at 9 life. So I have no cards. I have 1 card in hand, and Aaron has 1 card in hand. He attacks with 3 creatures. It's obviously lethal. He has 2 cards in hand. And I cast a what is the 4-mana exile all attacking creatures?
Settle the Wreckage.
I cast a Settle the Wreckage. And Aaron responds with a removal spell for my Vanguard in response. And I know that Aaron has Unfriendly Fire and Lightning Strike in his deck.
Uh-huh.
And I let my guy die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because he has another card in hand.
Because if you go to 2, you're giving him lots of outs.
Right.
To just, like, have you dead.
To have me dead.
Yep.
And I go on to win the event. Aaron had a land in hand, for what it's worth. But I don't actually think that my play was wrong. He hadn't used either of his damage to the face spells.
Uh-huh.
And I thought about this play for like 2 minutes, and the judge was like, "You need to make a decision." And I was
yeah.
And you have to like there's a time in Magic where I wouldn't have even thought about this. I've been like, "Yeah, save my guy, dum-dum."
Yeah.
But what I'm doing is I'm reducing my opponent's outs.
Mm-hmm. And it's so important because, like, in that decision, it matters what card you have in hand. How does your curve line up to his curve?
How many cards he has in hand?
Yeah, because if you have the first draw step, so you have some amount of advantage because you get the first look at a new card. So if you draw a creature, because then I'm assuming that both boards are then going to be empty, right? And you're both at a low life total, and whoever sticks the first creature is going to be at a big advantage. And so.
Yeah, if I stick the first creature, he now if his card is Unfriendly Fire, he now has to use that on that creature.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so it's just thinking about the match that you're playing or the game that you're playing, and I think playing to your outs is such a huge it's kind of like a big big thought because it comes up in so many different ways. So I had in sealed, it can also apply to when you're building a sealed pool. I thought this was pretty important. I had the sealed pool in Phoenix where I thought my pool wasn't that great, but I thought that I would have it wasn't that great. And I thought that my best shot at winning games was just being more aggressive than whoever I was playing against, just because I didn't have great rare. All my rares were pretty unplayable, and it was in a format where there's going to be lots of big dinosaurs and stuff. And so I played to my outs of deck building of, all right, I need to build the best aggro deck that I can muster so that I can beat the decks that are going to be clearly better than mine. And it's so important to just understand how the format works, understand how the game is playing out, and making decisions so that you give yourself the best chance to win and give your opponent, eliminate outs for your opponent also is a great way to put it.
So that's it for this week's episode. Don't forget to check out our sponsors at playatgamegrid.com and the Mana Base. Don't forget to check out our Patreon at patreon.com/LTOMTG. You can find me on Twitter at SpencerH. You can find Danny at DJ Cathro. You can find Mason at, is it still SOB Mason?
I think so. Yeah. Yep.
You can just change that, Mason. You don't have to try. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel where you might be watching this. You can subscribe to the podcast. Leave us a review. Let us know what you think. Help us improve. It really means the world to us. If you're looking for a direct link to this podcast, maybe you're listening to this on the overall network, you can find those on the YouTube channel. You can find those on the website. Everything is really appreciated. You can tweet us directly with #What'sThePick. #What'sThePick is our Twitter outreach program. If you tweet it, we'll read it. And as long as you show us the picks previous, anything is really appreciated. We really like the first 3 picks where we get to have a really in-depth conversation. But at the same time, if you have a really interesting pick and you can show us the rest of the pack, that'd be super awesome. It means the world to us. Just post a screenshot with hashtag what's the pick, and we will talk about it. The last one is a weird one that's like a puzzle pick, so we're not going to talk about it.
I saw that one.
But thank you everybody so much for listening this week. And Danny, you want to do the push-up challenge with me this week? Did you see that?
No, what is this?
So every trigger that either one of us miss, we have to go up to the other person in between rounds and do 10 push-ups for each trigger we missed during that match.
Okay, deal.
And then, hold on. And then at the end of the tournament, whoever did the most push-ups has to donate $1 for each trigger missed to a mental health charity.
Done. But I have to audible. I can't play tokens anymore.
It's okay. I'm playing a snake deck.
Oh, well, those are replacement effects. Do those count?
Yeah.
But your opponent can remind you of those. They actually are required to remind you of this. So make sure your opponents also get a warning if you...
Yeah. Also, at the end of every match, don't forget to ask your opponents, did I miss any triggers that I shouldn't have missed? So that you know if you missed them.
Important. Yeah, we're definitely... What's like the least trigger? I'm playing Control. There we go. No Aether Hubs. Take them all out. All the triggers are out of my deck.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you want to join, if you're going to GP Portland, you're welcome to join us in this challenge as we try to improve mental health, as well as get a little bit MTG fit and just play better Magic. So thank you everybody for listening, and we'll see you guys all next week.
Yeah.